Good afternoon, and welcome to ARA's panel presentation, From Influenced to Influencer, Wielding Power Through Mentorship. My name is Jane Hamner. I am the Chief Growth Officer for McCann Partners, a Chicago-based IT recruitment organization, and the co-founder of ARA, with Megan McCann, CEO and founder of McCann Partners, and Leslie Vickrey, CEO and founder of ClearEdge Marketing. We are honored to be hosting this year's final ShyWickCon session, and have had the pleasure to be a partner with ShyWickCon since its beginning 6 years ago. It is so wonderful to see the expansion and growth this conference has had over the past 6 years. The team at Women at Innova have continued to inspire and drive and build an amazing community with a mission to support women in IT. For those of you who are new to ARA, we were founded 8 years ago with a focus on providing opportunities for women to learn and activate their careers. We do this on dual fronts by helping businesses bolster the number of influence of women working and advancing in technology roles, while also helping women navigate career paths and challenges through thought leadership and events similar to today's presentation. We have an amazing lineup of speakers sharing their inspiring stories today. I'll hand over to Leslie, who will talk through the event format and the agenda. Les?
Thanks, Jane. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here today. As Jane said, this is an event we have looked forward to every year since its inception. We truly appreciate the partnership and opportunity to bring ARA content to all of you here today. So today's session is a little different than years past. If you've attended before, we've really focused a lot on panel discussions. Our goal today is to have you hear and learn from 4 leaders, all sharing different experiences and stories in a 10-minute TEDx-style format. As soon as the speakers wrap up, I'll be back to help guide us through a Q&A. We'll also be monitoring the chat and sharing resources throughout, and we really encourage you to do the same. We'd love to have an open dialogue. I can see in the chat already people are pretty active throughout the event, so remember to do the same during this session. And please give our speakers some encouragement and love throughout. You all know it's a little tricky being virtual and remote. We love the energy from being there in person, and we know we can do our best to make that happen here again today virtually. So I'll be back in a little bit for Q&A. In the meantime, Megan, I'm going to turn it over to you to get the program started.
Hello, welcome. We are thrilled, as both Jane and Leslie said, to be with all of you today. I am exceptionally excited to be introducing our first speaker. It brings me so much joy. She is a longtime friend, an ARA supporter, a trailblazer, champion, mentor, and the list goes on and on. I honestly just adore and appreciate all she does for so many, myself included. Audience, please welcome me in meeting Colleen D Egan, a hands-on builder and an empowering people leader with a strong vision and a diversity, equity, and inclusion mission. She is an entrepreneur, investor, board member, mentor, speaker, and moderator. She also is the president and CEO of the Illinois Science and Technology Coalition and Institute. Colleen epitomizes the art of giving back and paying forward. Her participation today is a shining example of just that. Join me in welcoming Colleen to kick off our TEDx presentation. Colleen.
I'm there.
Welcome.
I know. It's like, right, I lead a technology coalition and we're still trying to figure out technology. But I wanted to thank you so much for that just beautiful introduction. I love all of you as well. I wanted to thank Chicago Women in Tech, all the women at Innova, the conference team, all of the sponsors, and especially ARA for creating this space today for all of us, especially on this topic, which is mentoring. It's such an important part of our personal and professional journeys. And so thank you for inviting me to share my story in such a real, authentic, and honest way. I love that you've changed up the style that we can just speak to the audience. And I wanted to thank all the audience for being here with us today, too. I feel I speak for all of us on this panel today, that if one statement resonates with you today or helps you in your journey, then we've already done our job as mentors. And as Megan said, my name is Colleen D Egan. I'm the president and CEO of the Illinois Science and Technology Coalition. I'm the first woman to lead the organization. I'm probably the first queer person to lead the organization. I'm a founding member of the Women in Entrepreneurship Institute at DePaul University. And I sit on several boards and task forces. I'll mention a few that are really important to me. Chicago Tech Academy, Chicago Blend, which is working in equity in venture capital, National Louis University's Entrepreneurship and Design Thinking Program, Get Cities, the Illinois Innovation Council, the Women's Sports Foundation, and Congresswoman Robin Kelly's LGBTQ Task Force. As you can see, I love to be really busy, but the most important job I have in my life, other than being, a great wife and partner to my spouse and a parent to my children, is most importantly, I mentor. I'd like to start with my origin story because it's really important to my journey. And I feel that, all of our collective experiences make us who we are, especially myself. My dad grew up in an orphanage in Ireland. He immigrated to the United States. He was quickly drafted into the Korean conflict, spent a couple years there, and then, dumped back in the United States. And so navigating the world was extremely challenging and sometimes traumatic for him. But he had people to help him, guide him in his journey. So he knew how important that was. He told me to never look down on someone unless I was helping them up. And he taught me so much about resilience and finding joy in life, especially in the little things. My mom was the youngest of 9 children to immigrant parents as well, and 6 died at birth or within months of their life. So both my grandmother and mother had these traumatic lives, trauma-filled lives. They suffered from mental illness, and at times my mother was not equipped to parent me. Both my parents really didn't know how to navigate the world that I wanted for myself, but they knew that mentors and those connections would be really important to me. And at a very young age, I did too. They introduced me to all the interesting people they had met in their lives. And I actively sought out guidance from teachers, from Girl Scout troop leaders, older men at my dad's union hall. Those were some interesting stories that I learned a lot from. And the women in my neighborhood, I grew up during that second wave of feminism, or I shouldn't say I grew up, those women raised me, and they were trying to change the world. I was trying to be a part of that. During the 90s, when I really found my way in the world, it was the third wave of feminism, but more importantly, intersectionality. I learned so much about myself, and I came into my own, but I needed mentors more than ever before. I started the 90s as a straight, heteronormative, married with 3 children, woman who ended up gay and in court fighting for the custody of my own children. When I came out, I was president of the school board, the church choir director, a beloved coach, but the world decided for me that it would turn off my light. It decided that I could not participate in the world that I knew. And I sought out mentors who really guided me through a very difficult time of my life. They not only guided me through the personal, but they set me up for success in my career. Since the late 90s till today, I have been a founder, a co-founder, or a C-suite executive because of the hard work I've put in, because I understand the power of saying yes, and I have a thirst for learning and discovery. But most importantly, it's because of those who guided me, who taught me, who challenged me, and always supported me. Mentors, each and every last person in my life was a mentor at that time. Maybe it's the nurse in me. I probably should have started with that. I started in nursing. I moved into technology because I was obsessed with it. So I started as a nurse. Maybe it's the operator executive mindset that I have, or maybe it's both. But empathy, along with problem solving, has made me who I am and is foundational to my mentoring. I have mentored countless people, men and women, through the years at my work, at organizations like, there's a few of us on this panel today and in this call that volunteer for Chicago Innovation Women's Mentoring Co-op. I teach and mentor at the Women in Entrepreneurship Institute at DePaul. I mentor and teach at my own organization through one of our programs called the Mentor Matching Engine, and at all the organizations I serve. But also, I'll mentor the child of friends who maybe I've never met before, but come to me for some guidance. Maybe they're coming out. Maybe they're trying to transition in their careers. Maybe, they're just deciding if they should have more children. It is just within me always to serve and to help others. And I'm so thankful that earlier when I was introduced that was brought to light, because really that makes my life worth living, is to give back. Mentoring is a powerful gift to receive. It's an empowering gift to give. My colleagues know that after talks like today, I will stay after as long as I can to connect with people, to offer a time to continue that conversation. And I can't count the number of people that have ended up as friends, colleagues, and I've encouraged them to become mentors themselves, even to me. Through all these years, I've had such a diverse experience and I've learned so much, but I am learning every day, and I still seek out the mentorship of those that I trust, those who have empowered me, and those that I just want to thank. At the Illinois Science and Technology Coalition, I work on the big people side of life and K through 12. We support the innovation economy of the state through innovation programming, through data, through education and policy, both here and in DC. But the K-12 education side of my work is probably the most I'm proud of. We have a program there called the Mentor Matching Engine, which matches thousands of students with mentors from across the world. We train our mentors in DEIA and trauma-informed mentoring, because as you can see earlier, trauma in our lives, people need to understand that trauma before they can deal with children who've lived through trauma. So we train them in DEIA, we train them in trauma-informed mentoring, and it's not only life-changing for our students, but for our mentors as well. Children get to see what they can be in the world. They are empowered, they gain self-confidence, and so much more. But our mentors learn and grow as human beings as well. It's really important to note that, we work with a lot of marginalized students throughout the state. And I have had a lot of middle-aged white men who were mentors this year that said, Colleen, thank you for this training. And I'm using their words. I thought I was woke, but I wasn't. I had so much more to learn. Those kids taught me. They were mentors to me, not just mentees. And that's the power of mentorship. All of us can be mentors. All of us have unique experiences to share and knowledge to give. All of us have the capacity to improve the life of another, even in the smallest of ways. This last year and a half has shown us how important connection is. And I want to thank the audience for spending this time with us today. And I wish you the best in your mentoring journey. There's a few women coming after me with such unique experiences as well, and I can't wait to welcome them to the stage. So I am thrilled to hand the mic over to our next speaker, Jeanette Harvey. I just met Ginnette. Ginnette will, of course, become a friend and a mentor to me as I navigate my journey, as I continue to navigate my journey. Ginnette is the CEO and founder of Harper and Gray, a talent solutions company that puts diversity, equity, inclusion at the forefront. Named by staffing industry analysts as one of the top 100 influential leaders in staffing, Ginnette is extremely active in advancing equality for all and passionately drives the agenda on multiple diversity and inclusion initiatives. And I'd like to say, take it away, Ginnette.
Thank you for the warm introduction. Today, I'm going to share a little bit about my own journey of going from influenced to influencer and the importance that mentorship played in that shift. So to take you on that journey, I want to unpack 3 common mistakes that women make when managing their careers. And I can speak to those firsthand because, quite frankly, I've made every single one of those mistakes. So the first of those is underestimating the power of building strong networks. So women in the US are 28% less likely than men to have a strong network. So why is that when, as women, we're amazing at building relationships? Well, one of the reasons is that we prioritize it less than men. So with so many demands on our time as women, we often see networking and, by extension, mentorship as nice to haves, whereas for men, is firmly at the top of their list. Secondly, women interact with networking in a whole different way to men. When women do spend time to build networks, we are less likely to leverage it than men. So directly asking for help, a referral or introduction, resources. As women, it can bring on what I like to think of as the cringe factor, because we generally build such deep and meaningful connections. So anything that looks like it might exploit that can make us feel uncomfortable. Men are generally more socialized around the quid pro quo nature of networking and tend to get far more tangible results leveraging their network simply because they're not afraid to ask. A good mentor is going to be experienced, highly knowledgeable, and influential. So if we don't prioritize these connections, then we put ourselves at a huge disadvantage. Fortunately, the tide's turning around this, and there are more and more women embracing the importance of building diverse and powerful networks. However, we still need to be guarding against falling into the trap of, I'll just work hard, I'll let my performance do the talking, and I'll wait to be recognized for my accomplishments. My early career strategy was exactly that. So I joined a global company in my early 20s, and I got the opportunity to set up the company's North American business. It was a high visibility role. I was closing millions of dollars worth of business and gaining a ton of accolades as I went. So naively, when it came to investing time into activities, networking and mentorship, it just didn't factor into the equation. Little did I realize that had I shifted my thinking, a stronger network would have made my job easier. I was doing everything the hard way. Mentoring and investing in my network could have opened up so many more doors for me. And more importantly, it would have helped expose me to different perspectives that would have been game-changing to how I would have managed my career. I'd become super indoctrinated into the way that my company thought and did things, and successful mentors would 100% have created far more balance in my thinking. It was quite simply a missed opportunity. So what's the second common career mistake, and how could mentoring have helped? Well, failing to understand when the rules of the game change, or to put it another way, what got you here won't get you there. So in our earlier careers, often the path to progression is a little bit clearer. There's lots of people to compare ourselves to, and the criteria to evaluate performance is usually far more straightforward. That was certainly the case for me. However, the further we climb, and particularly as women, it can start to get more complex. There's more nuance to how performance, and more importantly, potential is judged. So as I advanced into a global senior leadership role, the landscape had started to shift for me. Things got more opaque, and the dreaded company politics came into full view. Performance mattered, but leadership brand became increasingly important. How do you navigate that when you hate self-promotion? I realized hard work becomes irrelevant if you haven't created sufficient visibility around you. And so in my situation, women were pretty thin on the ground at the top of the organizational structure, and I was on a bit of an island. So my previously quite short-sighted approach around mentors was really hindering me. So that was the moment for me, 8 years into my career, that I realized I'm going to need to play catch up. So I did a few different things. I called and asked the only C-suite female exec in my company to be my mentor. She agreed to it. Was it daunting to ask? Absolutely. Did she happily agree to it? Yes. And that was a lesson within itself. Many people are afraid to approach potential mentors. I say just ask. The worst that they can say is no. And in my case, the risk of getting a no was so worth it because the benefit of getting the yes ended up being a masterclass in organizational savvy from her and a powerful advocate and sponsor going forward. And I also realized that mentoring is not a one-way street. I got to influence her in the process too. The other thing I did was leverage some feedback that the new CEO of the Americas had given to me. So he'd offered me a nice casual critique that my leadership brand was less impactful than my male counterparts. I decided to use that to my advantage. I went to him and asked who he knew that could mentor me around this externally. He was, of course, delighted that I took his feedback on board, and he connected me with a brilliant woman, the former CEO of a huge technology company, and that proved to be game-changing. I maximized the connection and that relationship, and I grew my own network exponentially. So through this experience, I got powerful and well-connected advocates and sponsors. They helped increase my visibility. They spoke up for me when I was not in the room. I got access to connections and resources. I didn't just build my network, I leveraged it. I wasn't afraid to ask anymore. I gained different perspectives, ideas, and core knowledge. And my self-confidence and self-awareness increased. And then it was also a really great tool to reinforce the art of self-reflection. Any good mentor is going to challenge you and encourage you to hold yourself accountable. And that is what I got. So the experience that I had with those mentors, it inspired me to pay it forward, setting me on the path to go from influenced to influencer. I also realized that part of the reason I hadn't stepped forward in this way before was because I had unconsciously stepped into common mistake number 3, undervaluing what I had to offer as a mentor. The origins of that are, of course, rooted in the confidence gap and imposter syndrome, but I had to remind myself that I had valuable experiences to share with others to help support them in their journey. So by this point, I'd been instrumental in creating a $300 million line of business for my organization. And in the process, I'd navigated a ton of challenges related to leadership and business that can help someone else. And so once I leaned into the idea of sharing my knowledge with others, it actually paved the way for the most rewarding chapter of my career. Internally, I thought about the gap at the top of my own organization and the lack of senior female role models. I needed to fill that void by offering more mentorship to help light a path for those that were going to come behind me, but also more importantly, helping to create self-sustaining programs, both mentorship and professional development, to create better gender balance and succession for the long term. So when using influence, you don't have to wait to be asked or for an invitation. If you see an opportunity to make a difference, then just step up and do it. Aside from the internal work I did, my own journey in influencing others, It extended out to external organizations and nonprofits. I would offer my expertise around business, leadership, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it ultimately ended up inspiring the company that I founded earlier this year. So I set up a talent organization, Harper and Gray, that disrupts the status quo by driving more diversity and equity into our boardrooms and senior leadership teams. And through the work that I was doing with Harper and Gray, it's constantly challenged me to find different ways to support different communities through mentorship and influence. So whether that's educational content being put out, hosting skills webinars, speaking at events, my ethos is give generously. And the benefits to me have gone way beyond the feeling of just giving back. I continue to learn through the process and evolve my own network in a really rich way. I'd also add that when you give generously, whether it's your time, expertise, resources, advice, things really do have a habit of coming back around. I was blown away when my network showed up so generously for me when I launched my own business. It was humbling, but also incredibly validating. So my key takeaways around mentorship: don't undervalue the transformational impact it can have on you and your career. 2, our careers rarely go in a straight line. An experienced mentor can help you navigate these changes and bring a fresh perspective. And number 3, pay it forward. Sharing your experience and expertise, it matters to people, and it's also the most rewarding part of the journey. So thank you so much for listening today. I think that Venetia is going to share my contact information. Happy to connect with anyone on LinkedIn, and of course, be a resource to anyone that needs more support around this or has any further questions. But it is now my pleasure to introduce our next presenter, Colette Mann, who is the Executive Vice President and CIO of First American Bank. She is an accomplished information technology management professional. Colette has a proven ability to deliver innovative solutions that fully support corporate growth objectives. She's a results-oriented, agile trained leader, adept at developing and guiding large, diverse teams to deliver top performance. Thank you for being with us today, Colette.
Thank you, my friend Jeanette. What a wonderful presentation. And I learned so much from Jeanette. Thank you for sharing. So today I wanted to spend a little time, first of all, really dealing with the first part of our topic today is from influence to influencer. Because before I can get that or share my journey, I can't talk about mentorship. So when you're growing up or when you get married, you have kids, you go through this process of signing your children up for everything. You want them to have every opportunity in their life and to grow up to be strong individuals. So I have 2 daughters, and as they were growing up, Colette signs them up for Girl Scouts. And as you know, when you sign your kids up, that signs you up. Which gave me the opportunity to be one of the Girl Scout leaders for over 10 years. And this wasn't in my speech, but I'm happy to say that all of my girls that went through the 12th grade, and they all became gold recipients of the Girl Scout Awards, which is the highest award in Girl Scouts. That was a little side thing for Girl Scouts. But anyway, during the pandemic, my youngest daughter, who is a part of the Girl Scout program, and I were sitting around having time on the TV and trying to keep ourselves busy. And we started watching videos, and she tells me about one of her best friends who, her name is Imani. And she says, "Mom, Imani is building a career as an influencer." Building a career as an influencer. I said, "Really?" She's building a career on how to be an influencer for people to how to take care of dogs. I'm like, really? That's such a thing? I had no idea that actually existed. I'm like, so you can go from an everyday person and then you can all of a sudden be an influencer and make all kinds of money. I'm like, oh my goodness, I need to sign up for that. So I had to do some research on this role because maybe I have a second career and I'm becoming an influencer versus being the CIO. So I go to my trusty research tool, Google, and I discovered this behavioral scientist, and his name is John Levy. And John's pretty funny. So if you get a chance, go look him up. And John says that your success as an influencer is really based upon two things. One being, who are you connected to? And how much do they trust you as an individual? So then I sit back and I said, let me reflect on Imani's journey, because she's now becoming a successful influencer. And how do I transcend that type of skill set for women in technology? How do we let women in technology harness the power of mentorship to now be an influencer on a daily basis? So what does Colette do? She goes back to her trusty tool. Being in technology, you love Google. It tells you all kinds of things. Google, and I go up and I want to look at research tools, research about mentorships or mentoring. Did you guys know that 71% of Fortune 500 companies have mentorship programs? That's pretty awesome. With only 37% of the professionals having a mentor. One of the things I want to tell you, one of those professionals would be my daughter, Sydney, and that's Imani's good friend. My daughter has perfected the art of being a part of a mentoring program, formal and informal. She's very good at that. She calls herself the queen of connection, not just any old connections, but connections that foster her growth. So that's the good thing about being a part of mentorships. You get to connect with folks and then be focused on what you need to do and how it can grow your career, where you want to be as you move through your particular professions. What happens when we are a part of a mentoring program? When we are part of a mentoring program, mentors and mentees both get something from it. One, we get connected. Today, I'm connected, not necessarily through mentoring, but I'm connected here at this particular conference with many women that I would have loved to be a part of either the mentor program with them or be a mentee. And also, it allows for us to build trust. So that's the great thing about mentoring programs and being a mentor or being a mentee. You develop trust. Now, remember, our friend John says successful influencers, they have two key concepts. They have to be connected, and the people that they're connected to must trust them. So I don't know if your job, but I know in my career, many people would say, oh my God, they're hiring their friend. Oh my goodness, all the jobs go to people who they already know. And, we've been in that situation where we always think that someone got the job because they knew someone. Now, that probably may be the case, but let's think about it. I've hired a lot of people in my lifetime. And the one thing that I know about hiring someone, I want to bring, as you would want to bring someone into a job that you trust, that you know their skill set, that you know they will use their greatness to bring out the greatness in others. And that's all done because we built trust. So my daughter, Sydney, I love Sydney. If you guys ever have an opportunity to meet Sydney, she is pretty funny. And the thing that she does as a result of all of these opportunities that she has had as a result of her connections, she gets all kind of invitations for boards and speaking engagements and latest technologies and training. She just gets it all because, one, she is a mentor. She is a mentee. She connects with everyone. They build trust with her because she has been a person that they can depend on. They know about her. So I sit back and said, let's talk about Colette's story, because, I always like to talk about my kids. I do have two, by the way, in case you didn't know. One is in school and the other one's not. But the one that I'm talking about is Sydney, who's always busy connecting. So I think about my story. I often say to people, if it wasn't for one particular event, today I may not be the executive vice president, chief information officer of First American Bank. when I graduated from college, I started in engineering. I have an electrical engineering degree, and I was doing software development for a company. Now, at that time in my life, I had this idea that there was nothing I couldn't do. I mean, nothing. There was no job that I couldn't apply for. There was no job that they couldn't hire me for that I couldn't do. Isn't that pretty interesting? So I go and I apply for a job inside of my internal organization as the IT manager. Needless to say, the IT management job was not mine. It was given to a young lady by the name of Kathy. Kathy and I become friends. And then as you move on, Kathy and I get connected. Kathy becomes my informal mentor. Kathy understands my ability to deliver processes and solutions. And by the way, I got a different job in management, but it was because of my connections with Kathy, because of Kathy's mentorship for me, that I was able to, fast forward years later, apply for a job inside of another company where Kathy now is the CIO. Because of my background with her, Kathy hires me as the senior IT professional manager for one of her groups. And that was done as a result of the mentorship that we had, the trust that we had built. So I was harnessing that power of mentorship to become from influence to influencer. Also, it helped too that one of Kathy happened to meet one of the friends of mine, one of the fathers of a Girl Scout at a meeting. They were connected and they were conversating about the situation. And as a result, the two of them came together, and I guess about 2 weeks later, Colette was working for Kathy. So remember, the power of mentorship pays back on a daily basis. We are connected with others, and they trust us because we are connected with others. I want to make sure that I leave you with 3 things. An influencer's success is based on 2 things: who you are connected to and the trust that you build with them. We have the power to grow our connections through various ways and on a daily basis. However, I believe mentorship is our strongest tool to harness that power. It is through mentorship that you can grow trust. Trust is one of those very key skills that opens the door for great opportunities. I want to thank you guys this afternoon for having me. And I want to bring you one of my newest friends, Ms. Priyanka. Next to the stage, Priyanka Mehandiratta, founder and CEO of Unmute. At Unmute, Priyanka and her team strive to help generations of women become the leaders of today and tomorrow. Priyanka also was recently recognized by Analytics Insight as one of the 10 most influential women in technology. That is why Priyanka is my new best friend. As you say, Priyanka, let us get started. Time to unmute. Thank you.
Thank you, Colette, for a great introduction. And welcome, everyone. Thanks for your time. And I think it's true when everyone says save best for the last. So here I am. Before I get started and share my screen, as I do have some insights to share with you in my presentation, I like to share with my story. I was born and raised in India. When I came to Toronto, Canada, 20 years ago, I brought with me with the same mindset of social conditioning that my parents, my teachers have taught me. Priyanka, be a good girl. Don't speak up. Good girls don't speak up. Stay in your lane. Do your good job. Don't take risks. Stay in a stable job. Money is important and blah, blah, blah. I valued that advice throughout my life, throughout my career. However, I was missing on opportunities, even though I was one of the top employees in all of my career in talent management for 16 years. 4 years ago, I still remember, and I do get goosebumps while I share this story with you. I was coming to work first thing in the morning after dropping my son to the daycare, and my boss brought me in the office, and I had no idea what's happening there. And all I hear is my client was on the call, and my boss started bulldozing me for something that I had no clue on. I stood there frozen, and I had no idea what to say and what not to say because, as I said, my parents taught me don't speak up, and I didn't speak up. I remember running to the washroom, crying and sitting there for 2 hours. And I was so mad and I was so disgusted and I was so angry, not on my boss, not on the client, but on myself for not speaking up, for not unmuting myself, for saying things that this was not me. And all the social conditioning that I inherited from my parents, my family, my teachers, my professors was working against me. So last year when pandemic happened, and I was reading this data from McKinsey, and it still stands corrected, which is 67 million women were forced to leave workforce. If we go by the same speed, it will take 99 years to reach gender equality. 99 years. None of us will here on the call would be alive by then. Not that, I was reading another data from McKinsey, which is 45% of women say it's difficult to speak up in virtual meetings. If this is how the work would be, if this is how the future of work towards, that needs to be changed. 1 in 5 women says that they have felt ignored and overlooked by their colleagues during video calls, and I couldn't agree more. So I launched Unmute in the middle of a pandemic, even though I was ridiculed for that. And I want to make sure I can share some of the more insights here. Unmute is a women leadership development company. It's my way of giving back to the society, to the women today, and building the women of tomorrow in way of mentorship. Because if I got the mentorship 15 years ago, my career would have looked very different. As Colette said, I was recently be advised as 10 most influential women in technology. I'm the founder and CEO of Unmute and I'm featured in Valiant CEO magazine. And you must be thinking, wow, so successful. I am not here because of my successes. What has really worked for me, and most of us, this kind of mindset is I have embraced my failures. I have failed. I failed as a wife, I with relationship, with jobs, as a daughter, as a wife. I have failed consistently, but I am not a failure. So one thing that we all can do differently on our call today as women, as peers, is embrace our failures, because again, we have taught and told again that failure is not an option. My father and my mother has told me consistently, Priyanka, get your good grades, get those A's. Getting an F was never a choice, and that has worked against me, and that is working against us. Failure happens to everyone. Failure is the inability to yield or achieve results. It's the lack of success. However, there is a big yet here. We allow our failures to define who we are. We also allow others to define us through our failures. That mindset has to go. We really have to unlearn that mindset and start looking at failures as insights. We have to take risk. We have to take failure and get comfortable with it. We have told that failure is not an option since we were children. If I can count how many times my parents, my teachers have taught me, go after that success. You cannot be a failure. I could have been a millionaire without working. You have to make sure when you detect failure, you're embracing it, you're not leaving it on the table, and apply the learning so we can innovate and the failure learning can go on. And we look at that failure as not just as a stepping down, but always a step up. Failure is an event, not who you are. Understand that from today, failure is what happens to you, not what you are. That mindset has to go. Recognize that failure can be an opportunity. Talk about it. Don't be ashamed. Don't hide yourself in failure. Start talking openly about it. As more important, you really have to get out of your comfort zone and embrace learning, because failure is the new learning, and that has really helped me for who I am as a founder and CEO of Unmute. And the way I'm seeing success in the places, I've started accepting my failure, and I want you to make sure you do that too today. Thank you so much. I now welcome ARA founders Leslie, as well as Colette, Jeanette, and Colleen to join me back on the stage for the Q&A portion of today's program.
Thank you so much. Oh my goodness. What a moving session. And please, everyone, I would love to see more questions in the panel here that you would like to share, and just really feedback in general. I have taken pages, I feel like, of notes here today. And when you all mentioned, even if you just said chills, I feel like every time someone spoke, something else really stood out to me. Colleen, never look down on someone unless lifting them up. Ginnette, underestimating what you bring to the partnership. You've got to help fill that void. Don't wait to be asked, pay it forward. It's the most rewarding part of the journey. And Colette, I loved your passion and stories. I have to say, your passion around your daughters was so inspiring, and hearing you, it makes me want to cry right now, hearing you reflect on them within your own story. They're so fortunate to have you as a mom, a mentor, and friend, really, for helping raise them. And Priyanka, be a good girl, don't speak up. Thank God you decided to unmute. I really feel like that unmute button was created for you to share your story, so we could all learn and grow from what you have to say. So with that, we have about, I think, 15 minutes here for some Q&A. And one I noticed, and Ginnette, I'm going to throw it to you first because you actually just launched a coaching business. So I felt like this was tailor-made for you. When it's Christy Parker, the question is, we often hear a lot about coaching. For you, what is the distinction between mentoring and coaching? When would you leverage one over the other? So Ginnette, we'll start with you, and then if others want to chime in, that would be great.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I would say with mentorship is so much more about leveraging the personal experience of the person that's mentoring you. So it is a kind of a lot more advice focused, and with coaching, that's obviously so much more focused around empowering and kind of unlocking the potential within you. And so coaches tend to leverage a lot less of their personal experience, right? Because it's actually about guiding you to find the answers that are within yourself. So it's kind of a subtle difference, but I actually think that the most powerful way to grow and to develop is to leverage a combination of the two. So I tend to always have an executive coach that I work with, as well as a mentor, and I get very different things from both of those experiences.
Thank you. Anyone else want to chime in on that one or have experience with that?
In my experience, especially, in the tech community, for us, coaching has always been, more specific and structured, where mentoring can be more broad and, like you had said, unrestricted, talking about, life in general or the journey. So that's, one of the distinctions there. And sponsorship too. We haven't talked about that, finding those champions within your company that really, I think someone mentioned earlier, when you're not in the room, they're championing you.
And I also like to add that when you look for, it's very natural and human. When we look for mentors, we look for someone who looks very similar to our identities and values and systems. Don't be afraid to be with someone that looks totally opposite, has diverse ideas, So if you're an introvert, go for an extrovert. If you're an extrovert, go for an introvert, because you don't know how your synergies can challenge your blind spots. Please find someone that's totally wacko, opposite from you, and you will see successes in the place you have never envisioned. And I'm speaking with my experiences.
I would also like to chime in and say, when you talk about coaching, there are opportunities for coaching. It doesn't have to be a formal process. I have had one of the members of our information security team say, after a meeting, they give me a call. Can you give me some coaching on how I did in that particular time and space? It's immediate, it's impactful. And then the next time that they go and have that meeting, they are able to understand the feedback that I gave them or someone else to help them be a better person to lead not only that situation, but any other one. So coaching can be done immediately on anything. You can always stop and ask someone to provide you some coaching or some feedback on some things.
I just had lunch with Ginnette not too long ago. We actually were catching up, and I felt very fortunate to have lunch with a mentor and a formal coach because you could do both with me in one setting, which was fantastic. One of the things when we started ARA, it was really built on the premise of mentorship. And one of the first events we had, this is going back probably 9 years ago, we had a room full of people and we gave everyone 2 colors of a slip and basically said, okay, at the end, raise this color if you're a mentor and this one if you're a mentee. And we were surprised, but now in hindsight, all of these years later, I'm not. Everyone moved over to the mentee side of the room, every single person. And I remember coming out of that event, we were setting up a speed mentoring event. And at the speed mentoring event, we were very lopsided. We needed way more mentors because we had all these mentees. So Jane, Megan, and I started calling friends of ours and saying, okay, would you're fantastic. You've got so many great stories and experiences. Why don't you be one of the mentors in the speed mentoring? And time after time we got, oh no, I'm not a mentor. I'm more of a mentee, and just this pushback. It's the same thing you hear about women not wanting to do public speaking as much, or not having that confidence, or seeing themselves the way other people see them. And we kind of had to ask for favors to say, no, we really need you to be a mentor because this event will be a complete bust if we don't have more people. So we asked friends to step in and be mentors, and their feedback coming out, and you all talked about this a little bit today, was so positive. It built their confidence, it lifted them up, and they kept saying, I didn't even realize I was tapping into these stories that someone would find, value in this experience. So I'd love to ask you all a question, just around that topic, because even Colleen, you and I are both very active in the Chicago Innovation Women in Mentoring Co-op. There's always a call. There's always a need for more mentors. What can we do to kind of push women over the edge to say, give it a shot? I don't care how old you are, how many years of experience you have. We were talking about Shy Tech Academy the other day, Colleen. I asked someone who's only a couple years out of college to be a mentor because they're actually more relevant than I am in mentoring them. So what advice do you all have for people? How can we get more people to see in themselves what we see and to step up and be mentors?
Can I start? Sorry. Is it okay, Colette?
For sure, Colleen.
I just wanted to jump off something Priyanka said about diversity. That's so important to this conversation because I know somebody else mentioned some McKinsey reports. When we're writing about DEI and we're talking about how important it is to have diverse workforce, that it's, and I'm making these numbers up because I used to know them by heart, but I don't know what the current ones are, but 30% more profitable, right? And if we've got executive teams, we're at 40% more profitable. If we're, diverse boards, we're at 45. Same thing goes for us as human beings. The more diversity we can add to our life, I like to think of it, the more profitable we become, not in a monetary way, but in just, having that group of people in our lives. So I'm so glad you brought that up. And getting back to Leslie's question, Mentor Matching Engine is something, that I like to talk about a lot because we get grad students who, because sometimes our high school students are more apt to listen to them. They're not too far off their own experience. They know where they've come from, so we encourage everybody to mentor. Everybody has, a life experience. Everybody has an education in a different way. It's not always, a formal education. It's maybe the neighborhood you grew up in, the experience that you have. So, we encourage everyone to be mentors because our students learn something from every person in their life. I had great people in my life as a child. If I didn't have them, it really took a village, It really took a village to raise me. Same with all the youth or younger people in our lives. It takes a village.
Yeah, Colleen, I love what you said about the youth piece because it really should start at a young age. So as we're raising our families and, looking at friends with kids, whatever it may be, encouraging them to help with their kids at a young age to see that they should have that and be engaged in it. Maybe that'll help them too when they're older to see that it's not something unique or foreign, or they don't know how to do it because they've done it their entire lives. Colette, I think you had something you wanted to mention.
I think, as women in general, we have so many jobs, right? We have our professional jobs, we have our children, we are volunteers, we, head Girl Scouts, we head the soccer team. So sometimes in general, we tend to not want to take on these other responsibilities like mentorship. But I think that with pandemic, it has given us a huge new way of looking at things. Mm-hmm. And platforms, like this one, to allow us to provide access to these women, like these great women I'm on the panel with. I'm humbled to be on the panel with today. So I think that in the past, it may have been an entry of just so many things on the woman's plate. But now in today's world, I think we have such great opportunity to connect women through technology, to allow us to have those relationships and build upon them. We may want to recraft the way we solicit and the way we encourage them to connect. In the past, it was, just if you had to drive, you had to do this, because we have so many things as women in general. So I encourage us to rethink how we serve it up. And if we serve it up a little differently, we may be able to attract a lot more from across the country and across the world.
Can I add to that, Leslie? So I agree with everything that sort of Colleen and Colette just kind of said on the topic and the way that you framed it. I think where it is just a straightforward confidence gap, and people just don't really see themselves in that role, which is something I've definitely experienced when I was putting together the internal mentorship program at my previous organization. That people would just know they didn't see themselves in that role, and almost felt kind of like imposters. I think what we can do from an encouragement point of view is letting people see what we see in them, right? So sometimes I think the kind of strengths and what people bring to the table, we don't always look in the mirror and kind of recognize that. And so if we can really be helping people to sort of identify, their strengths, what they bring to the table, and give them a different perspective in terms of how they are perceived. Not only there's so many benefits to that from kind of a development point of view and kind of building people's confidence, but I think that's kind of a really crucial thing, that if they don't recognize it in themselves, let's help them to to really sort of step forward and kind of claim their power around it.
So we have 2 minutes left, panelists. First of all, again, because we're probably going to go off air here in a second, thank you to all of you for being with us here today. And thank you so much for ShyWitCon for including ARA as your partners. Let's pay this forward, you all. You all have had mentors your entire careers and have shared great stories. What's the best piece of advice, rapid fire question, that you've ever received that when you meet with a mentee, you're always paying that forward? All right, Ginnette, I'm going to start with you.
Cool. So many great pieces of advice. I think sort of authenticity and just kind of advice about showing up as my most authentic self has been kind of really crucial to how I've developed, and I'm always trying to encourage that in others, really.
Thank you. Priyanka?
I think for me is like, even though you are a mentor, never stop being a mentee, because it's a two-way process. It's really, really important, because learning is lifelong. The moment we feel we know we have the answers, it's a shit show. So you never stop learning, even as a mentor. That's what I'm going to leave it here. Thank you.
If you're not learning, you're not growing. Colette?
Not at all.
Trust yourself. I think that a lot of times we don't trust as in our own technology experiences and knowledge. Trust who you are and know your worth in that. So trust yourself. And, as I believe my friend Priyanka said, we're in the room and we don't want to speak up, but trust that you know and you know your worth.
Yes.
Colleen, bring it home.
Yeah, I'm going to mention something that someone said earlier about don't be afraid to ask. What's the worst thing that can happen? They say no, right? And people ask me all the time for things. I say yes to almost everything. I believe in the power of saying yes, right? I know that no is a complete sentence too. I know how much I have to give. But, you know, I'm asking all the time of people, and it's amazing. I think we all feel that. Ginnette talked about it earlier. She opened a new company, and then the world just jumped back in to help her. When I started at ISTC, like the whole community just jumped in to help me. So don't be afraid to ask for what you need or ask for help.
Yes.
All incredible pieces of advice. Thank you so much for rounding out the program. And I believe we are right at the end. So thank you again so much, everyone. This was fantastic. Thank you for sharing the stories.